Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, coming to the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, where now Krishna guides Arjuna. Coming to the first verse, Sanjaya Uvacha Tam Taya Kripaya Vishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidantamiham Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudanaha. Sanjaya Uvacha said, Madhusudanaha, Lord Krishna, Tatha, as was said, Kripaya Vishtam, overwhelmed by compassion, Asrupurna Kulekshanam, whose eyes glittering with tears, Visidantam, one who is sad, Idam, this, Tam, to him, Vakyam, sentence, Uvacha, spoke. Sanjaya said, to him who was sad and overwhelmed by compassion, as was said, and whose eyes glittered with tears, Lord Krishna spoke these words. The first verse of the second chapter. The use of the third person in this verse reminds us that Sanjaya, the narrator of the Gita, was continuing his report to Dhritarashtra. The dialogue between Arjuna and Lord Krishna, on the other hand, is always in the first person. As the second chapter begins, Lord Krishna, referred to as Madhusudana, had been listening very patiently to Arjuna. Because he knew the importance of listening, he let Arjuna keep on talking. So always we should have the important point Swamiji says. First you have to listen thoroughly what the other person says. Then only we can advise. That only Lord Krishna also did. The word Madhu in Madhusudana refers to the ego. It means honey, something which is very dear to you, very sweet. The ahankara, the ego, is very dear to us. Everyone wants to boost the ahankara. No one wants to give it up. We have already seen that Madhusudana refers to Lord Krishna as the destroyer of demons. The ego here can be seen as a demon. Therefore, the one whose grace destroys ahankara, the one whose knowledge destroys it, is called Madhusudana. Arjuna was described here as being overpowered by sympathy, compassion and affection. His eyes were filled with tears because he had placed himself in such a situation. There was more here than mere compassion. There was conflict too because of his sense of duty. Arjuna was really confused about having to destroy people who were his gurus and relatives. Because he was a man of discipline, Arjuna did not allow the tears to flow. There are 3 reasons why one's eyes fill with tears. Pepper can certainly do it. When you are aesthetic, you also may shed tears. When we are sad, the tears can well up. Any disease causing tears is usually due to an irritation and is therefore covered under the first of these 3. Thus the tear glands are stimulated by these kinds of situations. We know that Arjuna's tears were not due to Here Arjuna's tears was not due to he was very anxious, because he was described here as one who was sad. Arjuna, the one who was sad, whose eyes were glittering with tears and whose heart was overwhelmed by compassion, was being addressed by Sri Bhagavan. The word Vakya in this verse usually means a sentence, a group of words. Here it refers to the whole subject matter of this particular section. What did the Lord say? Second verse of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupastitam Anaryajushtamaswargyam Akirtikaram Arjuna. Shri Bhagavan the Lord, Uvacha said, Arjuna, O Arjuna, Vishame, in this crisis, Kuta, from where, Idam, this, Anaryajushtam, not becoming of an upright man, Aswargyam, not the way to heaven, Akirtikaram, does not add to your good name, Kashmalam, despair, tva upon you, samupastitam comes. Sri Bhagavan said, in such a crisis, from where had this despair come upon you, O Arjuna? It is not at all becoming to an upright man and does not add to your good name, nor it is the way to heaven. Hey Arjuna, where did you pick up this despair, this sorrow? Asked Lord Krishna. Arjuna had been talking in a way that did not sound like him at all, because it was totally unexpected. Krishna's response did not take the form of helpful advice. He did not let Arjuna know that he understood his position and the difficulties he was facing. Instead, he wiped him with his tongue. Where did this despair come from, Arjuna? It did not befit you at all. It does not befit you at all. To expand Lord Krishna's words, you have missed your calling, Arjuna. You should have been a great actor. How could you have hidden this from me all these years? I never expected that you could get into this kind of a state. We all knew you to be the bravest, the most courageous, and now I hear talk that betrays only sorrow at the thought of the imminent destruction that this war will bring. It may have been all right if you had mentioned all of this before we came to the battlefield. We could have sat down and discussed it, but we can't do that here. This is both the wrong time and the wrong place. Thus Krishna admonished Arjuna. Arjuna should have been deciding with whom he should fight and how to proceed. He was in the battlefield, standing in the midst of the two armies, having requested Lord Krishna to be his driver. Lord Krishna had fulfilled his end of the bargain, but now it looked as though he had backed a horse that would not start. Not only are you sick, Arjuna, Krishna went on, but you have made me sick also. This is a time for brave deeds. Not this, how can I fight my own people? This is neither the time nor the place for such talk. Lord Krishna therefore demanded to know where all of this had come from. The verse contains three adjectives for despair: Anarya Jushta, Aswargya, and Akirtikara. And Arya Jushta derives its meaning from Arya, meaning an upright man, one who does the right thing at the appropriate time. Arjuna was reminded by Lord Krishna that he had always been an Arya, a man who did what was to be done. From such a man, despair is not expected and is therefore Anarya Jushta, not befitting or becoming to a Arya. It's not that an Arya does not cry. He will cry when the occasion warrants it, but not at the battlefield where he has to act. Thus Lord Krishna told Arjuna that his despair, his wailing and lamentations here in the battlefield were totally inappropriate, Anarya Jushta, not becoming at all. Lord Krishna also told him that what he was contemplating was Aswargya, not the way to heaven. Arjuna had said that he had heard that people who destroyed the family and thereby the dharma would live in hell, Naraka, an abode of pain for a certain length of time. He therefore thought that by doing his duty he would go to Naraka, and that by not doing it, by retreating, he would go to heaven, Swarga. He was therefore prepared to sacrifice everything and go to Swarga. Lord Krishna was not telling him that if this was his thinking, it would not work. Not fighting would amount to a dereliction of duty because he was supposed to protect the law and order of the kingdom. Therefore, when he talked like this, it was Aswargya. Lord Krishna also told him in a later verse that in addition to living with sorrow due to not having a kingdom, his dereliction of duty would gone at his heart. Furthermore, when he died, he would go only to Naraka, not to Swarga. To this, Arjuna might have said that he did not care about going to heaven. He did not even know if there was a heaven or a hell. Being cornered, he might have said that all he cared about was the here and now. If this was Arjuna's thinking, Lord Krishna would have told him that it would prove to be a kirtikara, a disgrace. This sorrow leading to you running away from the battlefield is not going to redound to your credit in society. People are going to look at you and say, that is Arjuna, the one who ran away from the battlefield. If you go to Rishikesha and sit under a tree, pilgrims will come to see you before going to the Ganges, saying, I want to see Arjuna, the fellow who ran away from the battlefield. Everyone will talk lightly of you. They will say how great Arjuna was, how courageous he was, how he was the master archery until the battle began. Nobody is going to give you any credit for such an action, Arjuna. Krishna may then have said, not only will they talk lightly of you, they will criticize and belittle all of your powers and prowess. Even ordinary people will talk. If you run away from the battlefield, Dharmaputra, your older brother, crystal fallen, will follow you. Bhishma, of course, will be angry, but being helpless, he too will go away. The whole army will fizzle out. Everyone will leave, and some may even have a sign of relief that they have escaped. Everyone in Arjuna's ranks was afraid of Bhishma and Drona, and those in the opposite camp were afraid of Arjuna and Bhima. They would all be greatly relieved. The Pandavas, along with their entire army, would be gone, and Duryodhana would be handed the victory on a platter. He would be able to say, hands down, without a shot, I won. Lord Krishna would therefore have admonished Arjuna even further. After you have gone to the forest, what will Duryodhana do? There will be parties everywhere. Duryodhana will let the entire army enjoy much more than a happy hour. It will be a happy day, because the media is with him. Duryodhana will see to it that people think you are a coward. He will say that Arjuna asked Lord Krishna to station his chariot in such a way that he could see Duryodhana's army, and seeing it, he ran away in fear. The headlines will read, Arjuna saw, shivered, and ran. There will be photographs of running away. Of course, Lord Krishna may have continued. Duryodhana will present it in the worst possible light, because Duryodhana cannot afford to have citizens looking up to Arjuna as a man of sacrifice. So, all this Lord Krishna is advising to Arjuna so that his mind becomes very clear and let him plan properly with determination and dedication. We'll continue the next session. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna. Coming to the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the second verse we were continuing. Lord Krishna would have also reminded Arjuna of the many wonderful titles that has been lavished upon him over the years. He was a role model for every soldier, and now he was thinking of running away. So this would be something like a noble laurent who, having been honored for a great work he has done for the years together, and running away, which is not correct, Lord Krishna tells to Arjuna. Therefore, Arjuna, your name, fame, credibility, and everything will all be destroyed. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Kirtikara means that which redounds to your name. A Kirtikara is that which does not redound to one's credit at all. Your sorrow, Arjuna, is Akirtikara. I see in it the seed for all further reactions. Arjuna had already dropped his bow and arrows and sat down. Lord Krishna therefore had to tell Arjuna that his thinking was confused and that he should get up and do what has to be done. Coming to the third verse of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Klaibhyam masmaghamah partha naitatvayupapadyate shudram hridaya dhaurbhalyam Tyaktvotishtha parantapa. Partha, Arjuna, Klaibhyam, and manliness, na masmaghama. Do not yield to naitatvayi upadhya upapadhyate. Does not befit you. Naitatva upapadhyate does not befit you. Parantapa, Arjuna, vanquisher of enemies. Shudram, lowly. Hridaya dhaurbhalyam, weakness of heart. Tektva, giving up. Uttishta, please get up. Do not yield to unmanliness, Lord says. O Partha, it does not befit you. Give up this lowly weakness of heart and get up, Arjuna, Lord is telling him. By calling Arjuna Partha, the son of Partha, Lord Krishna was saying, this is definitely not the title for behaving like a child. Lord Krishna also used the word Klaibhya, means a mind that is neither male nor female. In other words, the mental state of a state. Men fight in a certain way, and when women have to fight, they too fight in a way that is peculiar to them. So that is very important. Lord Krishna advises Arjuna against the state. Don't proceed in this way. Don't let this emotion take you over. Klaibhyam masmagamaha. Lord Arjuna was known to be a man of great discipline and effort, perseverance, dexterity and skill, and therefore this Klaibhyam thinking did not befit him at all. He was a soldier, and as Lord Krishna said, it was his duty not to talk in this way. More than a soldier, he was a Kshatriya. He was supposed to protect Dharma. By birth, he had this duty enjoined upon him. Thirdly, because he was a prince, he had to set an example. Nor was he an ordinary prince. He was the most exalted of princes. There was no one like him in this kingdom or elsewhere. He was a role model. Whatever he did, others would follow. So Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, you are a role model. You are a role model, a leader. You are not a sadhu. You are not a dropout who can do as he likes. You are a responsible person, and what's more, a leader. You are one of the 5 crown princes, and your older brother is supposed to rule. You are committed to doing what is to be done, and there is no escape. To run away is not fitting for any soldier, and for you, Arjuna, it is definitely not fitting. Therefore, Lord Krishna continued, giving up, being overcome by emotional weaknesses. At this time, Arjuna is base and lowly. Please get up. Although he addressed him politely, Lord Krishna ordered Arjuna up. In fact, in the first time of this verse, he called him Partha, and then, to remind him who he was, he called him Parantapa, the one who destroys the enemy. Don't run away, he said. Get up and face the battle. Lord Krishna told Arjuna to do what has to be done. For Arjuna, it happened to be a battle. The whole Gita is going to point out that what is to be done must be done, unless one is a sannyasi. Doing what is to be done can be a yoga, requiring only a change of attitude on your part. Thus, this part of the Gita is a setup for the whole dharma that is to be unfolded, the seed for what is to come later in terms of karma yoga. Being ordered to get up in this way, Arjuna felt that he was not understood, much less was his sympathy understood. He then began again to explain himself. So much respect did he have for Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna admonitions were meant as criticisms, but were only to show Arjuna that a particular type of thinking led to his sorrow, and that none he should change his thinking. Sympathy for others is a virtue, but what is to be done is to be done. The whole teaching is about another type of thinking, and Arjuna's thinking process was triggered off by Lord Krishna weeping words, as evidenced by his reply. Coming to the fourth verse of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna uvacha katam bhishmamaham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana yishubhi pratiyotsyami pujarha varisudhana. Arjuna Vacha said, Arisudhana, O destroyer of foes, Krishna, Madhusudana, O Krishna, Aham, I, Sankhye, in this battle, Pujarha, these two who are worthy of worship, Bhishma, Drona, Cha, and Yishubhihi with arrows, Katam, how, Pratiyotsyami, will fight against. Arjuna said, how will I fight with arrows against Bhishma and Dronacharya in this battle, O Lord Krishna? These two are worthy of my worship alone. In this verse, Arjuna said what amounted to, you cannot understand what I am saying. You cannot appreciate where I am coming from. I have been placed in a very inevitable situation. I have to fight, and I am quite accustomed to that. That I have to fight against people known to me is also not the real problem. I probably could manage to fight against my own people. But how can I fight against these two stalwarts, Bhishma and Drona, for whom I have such great reverence, to whom I own everything, Arjuna says. By addressing Krishna as Madhusudana and Arisudhana, Arjuna was reminding Lord Krishna that he had destroyed only demons and enemies, not his teachers and family. But those who Arjuna was not supposed to destroy were his gurus, both of whom deserved only worship from him. Instead of weapons, he should have brought flowers and been making garlands to offer them. Drona was the one from whom he had learned the art of archery. He had grown up on Bhishma's lap and learned everything he knew from him. Bhishma was Arjuna's role model, his inspirer, idol and hero. How can I use my arrows against these two men? He asked. Arjuna could not talk the way Lord Krishna was talking. He too could talk and tell others that they should behave like men and do what has to be done. But Bhishma and Drona were two people for whom he had the greatest respect, which they deserved, and Arjuna did not think he could destroy them. This thinking was what led him to ask Lord Krishna to teach him what was right. The process of Arjuna's thinking is revealed in these two verses very beautifully. The Gita still has not begun. Lord Krishna advised to Arjuna to get up was that of a friend. What Arjuna intended to do was not going to take him to heaven, much less redound to his credit, and Krishna told him so. Everything else Lord Krishna said was just to boost Arjuna's morale. Naturally, Arjuna was surprised that Lord Krishna was saying things like, don't get into this yaunch-like state, and so on, since he was not accustomed to be spoken to as a weakling. Given the words he used, Lord Krishna seemed to be thinking of Arjuna as a coward, someone who had to be told to get up and do what has to be done. Arjuna had never heard such words in his lifetime and had certainly never expected to hear them from Lord Krishna of all people. Therefore, he wanted to counter all of Bhagavan's statements. It is easy for you to tell me not to have these weaknesses. But the problem here for me is not fear. That is not why I want to leave the battlefield. I want to leave because of compassion and my concept of dharma, which holds that dharma can only be protected by protecting the dharmis. The only way I can win the war is by destroying all the dharmis. Therefore, none of this makes any sense. Arjuna's problem was something like the student who wanted to protect his guru from a fly that was bothering him while he slept. He took a big stone and killed the fly, also killing his guru in the process. Here too, in the name of protecting dharma, the very people who were supposed to live the dharma and hand it over to the next generation were all going to be destroyed. Arjuna was anguished and amazed that all of the Pandavas could have armed themselves to fight such a war. Thus he asked, how could we have decided to do anything as insensible. In Arjuna's perception, this war would not protect the Dharma. It was also very clear to him that the result of this battle would definitely not give him any happiness in this lifetime, nor did he see any kind of heaven for himself after death, because to destroy the entire Kuladharma was an act of sin. More than that, for the rest of his life, would have to live with the thought that he had destroyed all these people. Therefore, there would be neither Drishtaphala nor Adrishtaphala in such an action. Since this was Arjuna's view, he did not understand how Lord Krishna could say that he was frightened. He was on to explain that the people standing there were not unknown to him. They were his own people, people for whom he had the greatest respect and reverence. Unless he killed people like Bhishma and Drona, there would be no question of him gaining victory. And if they were destroyed, assuming that Arjuna was going to destroy them, what kind of happiness would be possibly have, living with the thought that he had destroyed, that he had destroyed those who revered the most, those from whom he had learnt all that he knew? How can I send arrow for arrow against them? He asked Lord Krishna. Even if Lord Krishna had argued that Bhishma and Drona did not seem to have the same concern for him, Arjuna did not feel that he was in a position to make any such judgment. Their choosing to fight against him may have been wrong, but at the same time they no doubt had their own logic for doing so. Because of his respect and reverence for these two stalwarts, Arjuna did not feel that he had the right to say anything about their decision to support Duryodhana. The point he was making to Lord Krishna was he himself could not sin by exchanging arrows with them. He would rather than draw the arrow that he would destroy Drona and Bhishma, his teachers. He therefore told Lord Krishna that he did not know the meaning of fear, as he very well knew. A brave man can be sympathetic, but a coward who is sympathetic has a problem, because the sympathy ends in distress. This kind of sympathy is of no use. Whereas when a resourceful, courageous, skillful person is sympathetic, the sympathy can be useful to the other person. A brave man should be sympathetic, so too a rich man should be magnanimous, and a knowledgeable man humble. Knowledge and humility, money and magnanimity, power and justice, strength and gentleness, these go together. Person having only one of the two attributes, such as power or strength, without the justice or gentleness that goes with it, is capable of destroying others. Arjuna was a brave man, a courageous man, and a mature person. A mature person can be sympathetic. The problem arises, however, when there is confusion. Arjuna's confusion was that of a mature person. Vedanta cannot be taught to an immature person. Instead, he or she can be taught something else, something that will resolve a particular problem. A mature person could be taught Vedanta, thereby solving the problem more fundamentally. That is where the Gita comes in, as we will see. So further, we'll continue the next session. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna. We are in the 4th verse of the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Before entering the 5th verse, Swamiji is highlighting the very important point about dharma, which is very important for every human being. So I will share those points, then we'll continue the verse. Swamiji says, India is a great country. It has something very special to offer to the humanity. The most ancient body of knowledge the humanity has is in the form of Vedas, which are looked upon as beginningless. It has produced many great masters that the world has never produced. Swamiji says India can be discovered only by understanding its spiritual culture. Veda says all that is there is Bhagavan. Isha Vasya Idam Sarvam. It is something to be understood, not believed. When something can be understood, when something can be known, there is reality. Swamiji says we are the Only people who can tell the universal truth that God is everywhere and His grace is available to all. This is the glory of our spiritual culture. Our religion and culture are intertwined. Our religion and culture are intertwined. Our religion has gone into the fabric of our culture. Therefore, there is no cultural form unconnected to religion. Swamiji says, Hindu Dharma is called Sanatana Dharma. Hindu religion is simply a view and way of life. That this Dharma flows perennially and keeps re-emerging with each cycle of creation. Swamiji says, we have a Dharma which has been with us for ages and which did not have a historical start. If this Dharma had survived all these centuries without any governmental support or because of any organization and despite the support of government for the aggressive traditions, it has something intrinsic. It is the Dharma of the Lord and therefore has no worldly beginnings or endings. Lord Rama and Krishna did not invent Sanatana Dharma Hinduism, but were born into this Sanatana Dharma. The very birth of Lord Rama through Putrakameshti Yaga is an evidence for the timeless existence of Sanatana Dharma, followed by Hindus. Rama and Krishna dominate everything. They are all pervading. You remove Rama and Krishna, and then there is no Hindu culture. Sanatana Dharma, being the Dharma of the universe, is a cosmic force. Buddhists, Jains, Parsis, Sikhs also follow Sanatana Dharma. Yet Hindus are the custodian of Sanatana Dharma because they have been following it since time immemorial. Dharma is the foundation for all the religions of our country. What is Dharma? Swamiji says, we have to interact with each other, with the animals, with the trees and with the world. In general, we have to interact. Relating is living, and being unrelated, one cannot live. Therefore, one has to always respond to what one relates to. One's responses can be right or wrong based upon common norms. This order of common norms is called the order of Dharma. Like even the law of gravitation that we all sense, the law of Dharma also we all commonly experience. Dharma is the head of everybody, which is meant to control one's actions. If there is nothing to control a person and one is totally ignorant of what is right and wrong, then the creation is defective. It is something like a car coming into the market without a brake system. We had no sermons from a mountain top. We did not require a son of. So everything is depend upon the universal values, the Dharma. Dharma is universal because it is also a manifestation of God. Everything is not only a creation but manifestation of Ishvara. Dharma is also his manifestation, not a mandate. This is the Vedic view of Dharma. This is the reason why end does not justify the means. For the sake of Ishvara, we cannot do anything against Dharma, which is not separate from Ishvara. What is Ishvara? In Sanskrit, Ishvara means God. Therefore, whenever the words Ishvara or God are used, both are one and the same. Ishvara is not an object of our faith or belief. Ishvara is to be understood. We appreciate Ishvara either intimately or vaguely, but there is no question of belief here. When I look at everything in this Jagat as given and is intelligently put together, presupposing knowledge, then the assimilation of the concept that this knowledge rests in a conscious being that is all-knowing is possible for me. Therefore, I don't say simply that there is someone called Ishvara. First, I may start with the statement there is someone called Ishvara, and afterwards I grow in my understanding to say that Ishvara is both the material cause and the intelligent cause, and hence all that is here is non-separate from Ishvara. Vedic vision of Ishvara is established the following two universal principles, which are also clearly revealed in Bhagavad Gita, the essence of Upanishads. God is everywhere is told in Gita chapters. God's grace is available to all also is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara's grace. Grace is said to be something which is meant for us. The question is, on what basis does God decides to give grace to one person and leave everybody else in disgrace? How is He to distribute this grace? It cannot be on a lucky dip basis. God cannot take chances like that. What is the base for God to confer His grace upon an individual? For us, grace is not distribution of packets by Ishvara. Grace is something that is to be earned. Either you earned it in the past or you are earning it now. You have to earn Ishvara's grace as you tap rubber from a rubber tree. Since God is everywhere, all forms are essentially God's form only. Therefore, we worship God in any given form and name. How Dharma is the very foundation of Hinduism. In a given situation, what is proper and needs to be done is Dharma, which is not separate from Ishvara. Dharma is not negotiable. I may get away from the hands of local laws, but I cannot get away from the law of Dharma because it is Ishvara himself. If I rub against Dharma, I get rubbed. Action and reaction are not only equal, they are opposite too. So when I go against Dharma, I attract what is called Papa, and when I go with Dharma, reach out to do something which helps another person, I attract what is called Punya. The Punya and Papa are realities for us. Therefore, the law of karma also is Ishvara. Dharma and karma, Punya and Papa, are both sides of one and the same coin. Therefore, one has to know the significance of Dharma. Pursuit of Dharma, Swamiji says, Dharma is usually presented as a subserving means for the pursuits of Artha and Kama. To say that you have to follow Dharma in order to accomplish Artha and Kama is paying lip service to Dharma. Nobody thinks of Dharma as a Purushartha, an end to be accomplished. Even many Indian spiritual leaders do not seem to understand this. Swamiji says, they always say Dharma has to be followed in order to achieve Artha and Kama, and that is why Dharma is at the beginning of that list. This is not correct, Swamiji is referring. Dharma is also an end to be accomplished. Dharma is something we have to follow, something even at the cost of Artha or at the cost of Kama. Therefore, Dharma becomes an independent end to be achieved. It does not subserve the other ends. Action in conformity to Dharma is not possible when I have subjectivity. The more objective I am, the more I can understand Dharma. Then my desire and action will be in conformity with Dharma. Hindu Dharma needs to be protected, Swamiji says. In the present situation, the genus of Hindu Dharma being what it is not capable of protecting itself. Therefore, Hindu religion needs to be protected through a well-defined program and dedicated action. We need to understand and recognize the truth that there are many tribes and underprivileged people in the remote villages of India. Those people are not separate from us. We have to accept them as they are, validate them and protect them. Their worship is our form of worship. We have to tell the people God is everything. God is not sitting in one corner and all that is here is Ishvara. With this understanding, one can worship God in any form. That is the reason why we can worship trees, animals and mountains. It is said in the Ishavasya Upanishad, all that is here is Ishvara. Ishavasya idam sarvam. That is why Hindus accept any form of worship and any language in prayer. But this acceptance did not mean that all religions say the same thing and lead to the same goal. Swamiji says about spiritual pursuit, the Vedic tradition, which is called Sanatana Dharma, Vaidika Dharma or Hinduism, has a well-defined spiritual pursuit with a definite goal to be achieved in this life. In India, the spiritual goal is called moksha, the freedom from the notion that you are bound. Moksha is not salvation. Salvation is interference. You are condemned already, so somebody has to give you salvation in heaven. A particular religion, Swamiji says, no different goals, but all worship Ishvara, they worship. Some religion, so Swamiji says, when someone is clear that all that is here is one non-dual reality. That person cannot be separate from that reality. Therefore, any word, any form of prayer, anybody's prayer would definitely be different to him. It will be meaningful to him only in his own vision of Ishvara. So Swamiji says, Bharat is a living organism. Our Vedas are sacred. Our Bhagavad Gita is sacred. Our literatures are sacred. Our dance is sacred. Our music is sacred. Our culture is sacred. And our way of life is sacred. So this is the profound teaching. So Swamiji says that the essence of the message can be captured in the concept of Desham, Daivam and Dharmam. In Swamiji's expositions, the Hindu nation, Desham, Hindu society, Dharmam and Ishvara, Daivam are inseparable and one cannot exist without the others. So Dharmam is very important. It is the highlighting factor which Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna also. Further we will see in the next session. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna. Coming to the 5th verse of the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Guru na hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyamapiha loke hatvarthakamamstu gurur nihaiva bhunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdhan. Word meaning: Mahanubhavan, highly exalted, Gurun, teachers, Aheva, not killing, he indeed, Iha, here, Loka, in the world, Paiksham, collecting food from others, Api, even, Bhoktum, to eat, Shreyaha, better, Tu, whereas, Gurun, teachers, Hatva, killing, Iha, here, Eva, even, Arthakaman, Kaman, security and pleasure, Bhogan, enjoyments, Rudira Pratigdhan, stained with blood, Bunjiya, would experience. It would be better indeed to eat food collected from others here in the world than to kill these highly exalted teachers, Arjuna is telling. Whereas if I kill them, the enjoyments of security and pleasure I would experience in this world will be stained with blood. Arjuna also looked upon his grandfather Bhishma as a guru because he had been taught by him as he grew up. Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya were not ordinary gurus of the world. They deserved the status of highly exalted people. In this verse, Arjuna told Lord Krishna that it would be preferable to live on alms than to kill his own people. Bhaiksha means collecting food from others, something that only sadhus are entitled to do. They take only a little from each person so as not to be a liability on anyone. The whole process of Arjuna's thinking was changing. In fact, his mind was already gone to this way of life rather than to fighting the war. Arjuna knew that if he left the battlefield, he would have to go to the forest. Previously, he had counted on this day to retrieve the kingdom and he had been looking forward to it for a long time. He had gathered all the weapons he needed, but when the day came, he decided not to fight. What else was left for him to do but go to the forest and live a life of arms? He could not remain in the kingdom. Only from the distant mountain people could he hope to collect a little food on which to live. This was all that was open to him, and he was ready for it. He wanted it, in fact. Only two types of people can take bhiksha: students, brahmacharis, and renunciates, sadhus. Brahmacharis can take bhiksha because they are not earning members of the society. They leave home and go to the Gurukula to live with a teacher. Therefore, they are allowed to go for bhiksha if they have to. Sadhus or swamis are renunciates and they live a life on alms. Arjuna's mind had now turned in this direction. Because he was already a father and grandfather, Arjuna could not become a brahmachari. Therefore, all that was available to him was the life of a sadhu. This was what he wanted, and this was the basis for the only question he really ever asked, which is the better of the two, karma yoga or sannyasa? Why do you ask me to do karma when there is this other lifestyle? He asked this question in the 3rd chapter and again in the 5th chapter. Then perhaps because he was a little shy about asking it again, he asked some other questions in between, and then slowly he slipped it again in the 18th chapter in a different form. What is the difference between Tyaga and Sannyasa? Thus Arjuna always kept the same thought in mind. He wanted to be a sadhu, and all of his arguments were directed to this end. Although Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya had come to the battlefield not as teachers but to cast their lot with Duryodhana for the sake of the kingdom, Arjuna's point was that these people were destroyed. What kind of a kingdom would he have? Any enjoyment he would experience would be soaked in blood. He would be haunted by the sight of his teacher's blood. Nothing would remove it from the mind, he was sure. The more one tries to remove a fixation, the more it becomes fixed. There is no way of removing it. If it could be removed, it would not be a fixation. Thus Arjuna knew that the sight of Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya bleeding to death would be permanently imprinted in his mind. The impact would be so powerful that it would remain a fixation. Therefore, any present experience he gathered would be spoiled, will be spoiled by the thought of having killed his own people. Any enjoyment he might have had would always be conditioned by the memory of the cost. The blood spilled by Bhishmacharya and Dronacharya and the others who were killed in battle. Arjuna then expressed his confusion in the next verse 6th of the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Na chaitadvidmah kataranno gariyah edva jayema yedivano jayeyuhu yaneva hatva na jajivishamah te vastitha pramukai datra rashtraha. Naha for us. Katarat, which of the two? Gariyaha, better. Etat, this. Na, not. Cha, and. Videmaha, I know. Edva, whether. Jayema, we should conquer them. Yedi, if. Va, or. Na jayehu, they should conquer us. Ena eva, indeed whom. Hatva, having slain. Na, najiji vishamaha, we will not want to live. Those. Dhatrashtraha, the sons of Dhritarashtra. Pramukhai, facing us. Avastitaha, stand. And I do not want which of the two will be better for us, that we should conquer them or they should conquer us. The sons of Dhritarashtra, after slaying whom we will indeed not want to live, stand facing us. In this verse, Arjuna told Lord Krishna that he did not know which was better, to win the battle against the enemies who were his own people, or to be defeated by them. Regardless of who was victorious, the problem would remain. To be victorious, Arjuna had to destroy all these people. He would have the pleasure of a kingdom but would be unable to enjoy them. For Arjuna then, the choice was meaningless, because Lord Krishna was telling him to get up and fight. He was therefore confused about how victory could be good for him. If on the other hand Duryodhana won, the Pandavas would have to go to the forest and live a life of bhiksha. Although this lifestyle was arduous and there would be no enjoyments, Arjuna thought that it was definitely the better of the two alternatives. He said that the Pandavas did not want to live by destroying the sons of Dhritarashtra and those connected to them, Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya, Lord Krishna, and so on, all of whom were standing in front of him on the battlefield. He called the war a no-win situation. It would be one big loss, and he had no interest in it, because Lord Krishna had told him that what he was thinking of doing was wrong. Arjuna argued that whether it was wrong or right, the situation was such that he could not see that he would gain anything good from fighting. Then Arjuna explained himself further. Verse 7th of the second chapter. Karpanya doshopahatas svabhavah pritchami tvam dharma sammudachetah ichreyasyan nishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham shadi mam tvam prapannam. Karpanya dosha pahata svabhavah, overcome by faint-heartedness. Dharma sammuda chetah, confused about my duty. Tvam, you. Prachami, I ask. Me. Yat, which. Shreyah syat, is better. Tat, that. Nishchitam bruhi. Please tell me definitely. Aham, I am. The, your. Shishyaha, student. Tvam prapannam, who has taken refuge in you. Mam, me. Shadi, please teach. Overcome by faint-heartedness, confused about my duty. I asked you which is better for me. Please tell me definitely. I am your student. Please teach me who has taken refuge in you. Arjuna is telling Krishna. Coming to the 8th verse of the second chapter. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudhyat echhogamuchhoshanam indriyanam avapya bhuman vasapatna vriddham rajyam suranam apichadipatyam. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudhyat echhogamuchhoshanam indriyanam avapya bhumavasa patna vriddham rajyam suranam apichadipatyam. Bhumau on earth, asapatnam, unrevealed, ruddham, prosperous, rajyam, kingdom, suranam, of the denizens of heaven, api, even, atipatyam, overlordship, cha, and, avapyam, obtaining, yet, what, mama, my, indriyanam, of the senses, uchchoshanam, dries up, sukha, shokam, sorrow, apanudhyata, should remove. Nahi prapashyami, I do not see. I do not see what will remove the sorrow that dried up my senses. Even if I were to obtain an unrevealed and prosperous kingdom on earth and sovereignty over the denizens of heaven. So further, we'll see in the next session. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna. Before entering the 9th verse of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Swamiji is highlighting on few more values in our life which we have to know and try to inculcate and assimilate in our life. Swamiji is referring to the mythology and epics, how important they are, how the values are we learn from those scriptures, those Puranas. So I'll highlight those so that it will help us to know perfectly and learn from Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Swamiji says, the Vedic vision and the way of life it offers have been cradled in the Indian literature through the ages. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata and the Puranas have supported and guided the lives of millions of people who share the unique treasures of India's past. In the Indian tradition, people learn about religious living not in absolute terms as presented by a doctrine, but by understanding how people lived their lives committed to principles and values. It's a very important principles and values. No educational system is complete without imparting the wisdom of living. We may receive education in technology, science, and humanities without any insight into what is right living. Swamiji says, universal values that everyone knows, such as telling the truth, non-injury, and non-stealing, often seem idealistic and impossible to live up to it in our society. One cannot live without values, yet living with them only seems to create conflict and suffering. So you have to understand properly the values without having conflicts and sufferings. That's what Swamiji is highlighting. Traditional society formally provides forms by which an individual was limited into his or her culture. These forms embedded in the mythic past carried great significance in a child's development. Initiation ceremonies marked the transition from one stage of life to another, as from studentship to marriage. These ceremonies and traditions helped individuals through the changes and demands of life, validating and supporting the individual through each stage of growth. In our past changing society, we must understand the mythological traditions and restate their relevance. For example, ancient civilizations traditionally honored a woman's role as one of selfishness and self-sacrifice. But the society's message to a woman today is independence, assertiveness, and equality with man. How does one relate the time-honored virtues to the present? Sita's life of selfishness and selflessness. Earlier also I made a mistake. Sita's life of selflessness and self-sacrifice in the Ramayana made her a role model for women. Life for today's woman being different, a new significance for these values must emerge in keeping with the changing times. Today we are no longer members of a homogeneous community, nor are there individuals' rituals to make us part of the larger society. Instead, there is a value for a distinct self-identity that separates the individual from society. We need to understand two aspects of mythological literature. One provides a model for the individual's inner growth, the other links the individual to a particular society. Any role model carries a unique expression within a certain society or era. The value of selflessness not only offered Sita inner fulfillment, but its expressions were also fully supported in a Satya Yuga. The modern woman, however, linked to her society by a new language of freedom and independence, carries life's expressions in keeping with modern society, even though the values the time-honored virtues. The universality of role models is to be discerned in one's inner growth and freedom. Whether we live in Satya Yuga or Kali Yuga, the stages of growth from childhood to adulthood, the fears of adapting to new responsibilities, and the dependency on society for fulfilling our needs remain the same. Our impulses, conflicts, and striving to be someone in the world also remains unchanged. This being so, the mythological models carry the universal messages of wisdom from one generation to the next. The mythological and historical stories portray wisdom in the forms of lives filled with adventure and drama. The characters inspire our lives and validate our struggles. They constantly help us in our inner journey and connect us with society and the moral order. The events described in mythological stories are kept alive through the generations by recreation in narratives, drama, dance, and other fine arts. Characters come alive on stage as vibrant models for the growing generation. The influence of mythology on children is different from its influence on adults. children learn ideals and values such as discipline and honesty from the role models in mythology, while adults assimilate these role models stripped of social form. For adults, the values portrayed carry a new meaning in present day society and help one discover inner growth and freedom. In the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, the Lord incarnate as the hero captures people's heart because his life as a human is committed to fulfilling something bigger than the norm. He performs courageous acts and his ordeals consistently reveal spiritual messages and insights. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata are epics, long narrative poems that tell the story of a historical hero. In Sanskrit, epics are known as itihasas, which literally means itihasa, or indeed thus it was. While the Ramayana is a Mahakavyam, a great poem, the Mahabharata is considered to be the longest poem in the Indian literary tradition. The Puranas form another body of literature, not necessarily describing historical events, but telling stories of gods and goddesses and imparting values that never become old. The name Purana means Pura Eva Navam, or indeed the old is new. To teach children Indian mythology, Ramayana, Bhagavata Purana and Mahabharata, the three great works of Indian literature, have been chosen. We recommend telling the stories systematically, emphasizing the basic values. Games, sketches consistently follow the stories. They are meant to help the children remember the stories and the characters in an enjoyable way. Enacting the themes, bringing to life the heroes and heroines of the epics is an important part of teaching Vedic heritage. To facilitate this, plays based on Ramayana, Bhagavata Purana and Mahabharata were provided as a finale to the study. The need for values, Swamiji says, since the core message of mythology is the role of values in human life, it is important to know the meaning of values. Value is a term that refers to the quality of an object or a situation which makes it worthwhile or desirable. Values that involve common sense ethics are called ethical values. In Sanskrit, ethical values are known as dharma. Dharma, then, is not just Indian, it is universal. To assimilate an ethical value in one's life, one needs to appreciate the value of that value. Rama may have been a dharmic person, but if one does not see the value of dharma in one's life, one cannot be inspired by Lord Rama. A child's character develops from the child's understanding of the meaning of ethical values. An introduction to ethical values through the teachings of the Ramayana, Bhagavata Purana and Mahabharata is meant to inspire and bring clarity to the child's thought process. Ethical values such as compassion, non-injury and truthfulness are esteemed in every culture and every walk of life. A child has as much value for non-injury as an adult. No one wishes to be lied to, not even the one who lies. Common sense, which all human being possesses, forms the basis for a consensus of basis for an acceptable human behavior in any society. Hence, that I do not do to others what I do not want others to do to me is a commonly shared understanding among people. Making known to others how I want them to behave towards me, I express my tactic awareness of what others expect of me. Thus, it is clear that ethical values are universal and known to all instinctively. Universal values are different from absolute values. Absolute values would have to be upheld at all times, in all situations, without exception. Such values would be impossible to cherish. In fact, the belief that absolute values even exist causes great conflict and confusion in society, because absolute values are ideals that can never be attained. It is important that values be taught in their relative universal nature. Being relative in nature, values are subject to interpretation according to context and must be followed using discrimination. Clarity regarding truth and the moral orders form the basis for judging a right action. Further, it's a very important topic. Further, we'll discuss in the next session. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna. We were in the 8th verse of the 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We were going through the absolute values and the relative values, what Swamiji has told all of us. Continuing with that, Swamiji says, the epics provide an excellent framework for carefully evaluating and imbibing what is responsible living. The texts present conflicts dealing with values, difficult decisions, and the need to come to terms with life without sacrificing dharma. When Bhishmacharya is stoned over whether to fight for the Kauravas or the Pandavas, and when in Panchavati Lakshmana stands indecisive over whether to follow Rama's order or not to leave Sita alone, or to listen to Sita Mata and leave her while he searches for Rama. One sees the reasons for their decisions. In the process, one discovers what integrity is in the life of a dharmic person, and thus a value is assimilated. One might wish that ethical values were dispensable and that one should live without them, and that one could live without them. I might speculate that if I were the only person on earth and did not carry any demands or relationship, I might not need ethics. But then I would still expect other creatures such as birds and animals not to hurt me. I would still expect some senses of ethics from them. Thus, no one can escape ethics as the fundamental level at any time. Neither can a person live without relationships, and in relating, values become inevitable. In fact, one's code of ethics alone draws one into relationships. Only when I think that another person is kind, good, or caring towards me do I risk investing in a friendship with the individual. For a human being endowed with the faculty of choice, values are as indispensable as breathing. Swamiji is highlighting very, very important. He is highlighting on values. If values are such an integral part of a human life, why do they become a source of conflict? Swamiji is telling. If I follow the value structure that I expect others to follow, my values will naturally become assimilated and a source of inspiration and strength. But if, because of conflicting needs, I fall short in living up to my value structure while still demanding absolute ethical behavior from others, I will experience conflicts and frustrations with myself and with the others around me. So we have to understand very clearly, Swamiji is highlighting, that's why scriptures always guide us. Value conflicts arise because of two opposed values. Two opposite values that initially carry equal weight, in my understanding, can cause a conflict with regard to action. For example, when a lie could help me obtain $1,000, I may see the value for telling the truth as obstructing my value for money. After consideration, I will act upon the value which is more valuable to me. A half assimilated value, for example, a half assimilated value for telling the truth creates self-doubt and conflict over one's incapacity to live up to that value. This conflict can be resolved only by understanding the relative nature of values and how to interpret them in a given situation. So every situation is important. That's why it is told that every moment we have to go according to the scriptures, what is told. Then only our minds can become sattvic and we can have clarity, and without conflict we can take a decision when a problem comes. That's what Swamiji is highlighting. Absolutely, there should not be any conflict, no agitation in our mind forever. Once we are in the spiritual level, we are trying to learn. Always a calm mind, composed, and think. Automatically, our mind will tune to that, and we can take decisions without any conflict. An internal knower-doer split. The knower knows what is right, but the doer does differently. That's why he's telling whatever we think we have to do accordingly. For example, when one frequently lies, one creates a moral split inside, and one is not able to enjoy one's comfort or accomplishments. The more one lives with such conflicting behavior, the more one becomes morally split and incapable of truth and integrity, incapable of trust and integrity. So that is very important. There should absolutely, the thought, word and deed should go together in every action, in every thought, in every attitude. The value of values Swamiji is highlighting. Understanding the value of ethics given on the internal comfort and strength that is required to live with a sense of fulfillment. External comforts carry limited value, and the degree of their value to me determines the degree of my dependence on them for comfort and strength. Careful understanding of what material success can and cannot provide and what ethics can do to help one discover happiness is a message of our mythology. So very clearly our scripture says how much happiness we get from the external world, external things, external objects, and how happy we are with the study of the scriptures internally, trying to understand and be fulfilled, be contented, be self-satisfied. All this we can win over through our emotions, through our proper thinking. So that is very important. Swamiji is telling emotional maturity comes from understanding the value of a value and making that value personal and natural. If I assimilate a value, then I act from it without any hesitation or deliberation. For example, my value for hygiene does not permit me to eat something that has fallen on the ground. Such assimilation of a value is tested and discovered by living one's life in keeping with the universal moral order of the world. Swamiji says, one's integrity and personal value system determine the quality of one's life. Therefore, we need to discover role models for ourselves and for our children in people whose lives were spontaneous expressions of dharma. Through Itihasa, Puranas, Panchatantra and other works, Indian history and mythology provide innumerable stories for the study and assimilation of dharma. If we follow the characters closely and appreciate their commitments, strengths and weaknesses as revealed through their actions, we will come to understand the relative but universal nature of dharma. Living a life committed to dharma, one will discover inner strength and maturity. It is this mature individual whose search for truth will lead him to the discovery of happiness and inner freedom. Swamiji refers to, for dharma, he refers to Lord Rama. Lord Rama is known as the Dharma Purusha, the human embodiment of righteousness, the ideal that we will we all will strive to attain. His actions, words, and thoughts reflect the strength of his commitment to Dharma. He appears as the ideal son, ideal husband, ideal brother, ideal friend, and ideal king. Rama's moral certitude, his unwillingness to compromise his value for values, drive him to the forest for 14 years, a difficult step he takes with grace. His respect and adoration for his father make him an ideal son, as does his accommodation and love towards Kaikeyi mother, his mother who banished him. He bears pains and hardships with equanimity and stakes his life to help others, including Sugriva and Vibhishana. When Rama returns to Ayodhya after exile, his sensitivity towards Bharata's intentions for the kingdom reveal his deep love and sacrificing nature. Lord Rama also displays other aspects of the human character. He grieves at the loss of Sita and is hurt when Sugriva seemingly does not keep his promise to search for Sita Mata. He also displays a sense of mocking just when he advises Lakshmana to help ridicule Surpanaka. Lord Rama exemplifies a person of wisdom who lives a life of dharma. His life teaches us what dharma is, and thus teaching the meaning of his life requires a corresponding sensitivity and careful understanding of dharma. Later in the Ramayana, as king, Lord Rama established a social climate of dharma, creating an ideal country where people enjoy prosperity and happiness. The ideal of Ramarajya has come down through the centuries, influencing the minds of people. So the highlighting factor is the value of values are very important. We can't skip not even a very small action without the value. That's what Swamiji is highlighting. So we should never compromise on dharma. Satyam and dharma, who are on the spiritual path, should always aim for Satyam and dharma at any circumstances without compromising. That's the importance. Further we'll continue in the next session. Hari Om, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna.